Ladies and gentlemen, Jacob Fatu is officially back, but here is the problem. Welcome to this week's Smackdown Takeaways, and let's get stuck into the video. Now, the first thing I want to touch on for this Smackdown's episode, of course, is Jacob Fatu's return. I think it's been over a month now where we thought, okay, what are we doing with Jacob? Like, he's just disappeared. To be fair, he's been tremendous since his debut, and I think his pacing's been just right. There were rumors around the WWE management not being too happy, I believe, with Jacob, or in terms of like not knowing what to do with him. Of course, that was all not true, but that was what was being spread around over the last 4 to 5 weeks in Jacob Fatu's absence. But during Drew McIntyre's promo on Smackdown, we heard the infamous tribal sounds. Shout out to Jacob Fatu's theme, man, like it bangs. And out he came in his traditional swagger, and he dropped a promo on Drew McIntyre saying, hey look, stop whining and complaining, which is basically what Drew McIntyre's character is essentially become over the last 2 years. It's worked for Drew McIntyre, and it's also like, okay, it's working, so why aren't we executing and concluding his character? That's WWE's problem, not Drew McIntyre's. However, the reason why I want to touch on this key aspect in this promo is because I see a major problem. Not a problem with Jacob or Drew McIntyre, because I will preface this by saying this was great to see. Having Jacob Fatu return after like 5 weeks or so, 5+ weeks I think it was, coming out and going face to face and promoing with the likes of Drew McIntyre is exactly the move WWE should have made. The reason why I say that is Drew McIntyre, of course, is a cemented Hall of Famer. He's a main eventer. And having Jacob Fatu come out and go face to face with Drew McIntyre, it's automatically put them into a program, which is ideal for Jacob Fatu, because this is exactly the magnitude of where Fatu should be sort of coasting right now. He's done his program with a lower card. He's feuded with sort of Solo Sikoa and everything like that. Now we need something where he can start sinking his teeth into. I like to sort of create a parallel comparison between him and Bron Breakker. Now over on Smackdown, you've got Bron Breakker as part of the vision. He has a clear path. Like it's evident with Bron Breakker. We know exactly where that boy is going. With Jacob, it's a bit like, okay, we're sort of going through the weaves here, figuring out what works and what doesn't. And I think that's what kind of made us fall flat for the last 5 weeks, because his path isn't as clear as Bron Breakker, but we do know he's on the same path in terms of him being the next big thing. Similar to Bron Breakker, he's going to be one of those main eventers, one of those WrestleMania main eventers as well. So in that sense, this program with Drew McIntyre, which I assume they're going to go into, is a perfect start, but they have a massive problem. And that is either Drew McIntyre or Jacob Fatu cannot afford to lose. I'm not talking about a match or a couple of matches, the feud. This feud is imperative. I would say it's more imperative for Jacob Fatu to come out successful, just because it would do a lot more for Jacob Fatu than it will for Drew McIntyre. However, that's when we run into the roadblock, the massive barrier. Drew McIntyre, for I want to say the last 2 years, has done some of his best work. However, when it comes to him just grabbing those infamous brass rings, he comes up just too short. And the closest we got to this was, of course, WrestleMania 40, where Drew McIntyre did become World Heavyweight Champion after defeating Seth Rollins, and then he was cashed in on by Damian Priest with CM Punk's interference. Of course, that led into the legendary feud between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, where ultimately CM Punk came out on top. So unless you've been living under a rock for the last year or so, the WWE is in a massive loop cycle. Like, they are afraid of taking risks. They're afraid of doing these little changes, or major changes for that matter. We all thought of WrestlePalooza, which was a dog-awful PLE. Anyone defending that PLE is just coping, because that PLE was set up to be something along the lines of WrestleMania or the Big Four, and it wasn't even as good as like a Backlash, in my opinion. It was subpar. But during that PLE, there were rumors, and apparently this was going to be one of the actual plans, was to have Cody Rhodes lose the WWE Championship to Drew McIntyre. And I think if we had done that, this sort of situation, and we had Jacob Fatu come back and face off, okay, cool. Like, this has a bit more stakes. We can probably walk away with someone taking an L here and not having it be that detrimental to their character or their sort of positioning in the company. However, right now, there's no title involved. And honestly, I think Jacob Fatu is going to come out on top with this program. And to me, that's a major problem. Like, what do we do with Drew McIntyre at that point? Because the whole story he's had, like, you know, keeps getting screwed or whatever, or he keeps getting in his own way, it works. But it works to a certain extent. Anything past that starts to become a bit, okay, we've done this. Like, the WWE is starting to do this quite a bit. They've done it with not executing on LA Knight. They did it with, obviously, with Austin Theory and Grayson Waller not breaking up on time. They're also doing it with Randy Orton, continuously teasing, coming after Cody Rhodes, or more importantly, eyeing up that WWE Championship like it's a nice piece of ass, and he's never going for it. And it's like, okay, we've been doing this for a while now. I appreciate long-term storytelling, long-term build, but when you guys need to execute, we need to execute. And right now, I think we've kind of booked ourselves into a corner. Now, if the context here was slightly different, if Drew McIntyre had a slightly alternative or different last 6 months, he came out on top with key feuds, or he became champion, or anything like that, or even a mid-card champion, I can understand we're in a position where two titans face off and it's like, okay, this is going to be top tier. But right now, Fatu also cannot afford to lose this feud because he lost his US Championship earlier on in the year. He's been out for like 5-6 weeks. If he goes back into just doing mid-card feuds, he's just going to be like, okay, we're kind of going down the LA Knight route now. And you know what happens when you get LA Knighted. I'm sorry to say, when you get LA Knighted, you stay so long in the mid-card where it becomes your character. And you still get fan reactions. People are still going to love you. They're still going to love Fatu the same way they love LA Knight. However, the risk we run into in that case is that Fatu gets stuck in purgatory. And that's not what we want. We want to execute on him. And I think naturally the path that you want to take with someone who's cemented to be a long-term main eventer is, of course, start in the lower ranks, the mid-card, work your way up to bigger feuds. This is the said big feud for Jacob Fatu. So it's imperative that he comes out on top. And I genuinely think that is the right decision. But where the hell does our boy Drew McIntyre go from it? Because honestly, I don't see light at the end of the tunnel for Drew McIntyre. Next up, I want to touch on Sami Zayn. The controversial Sami Zayn. And the reason why I want to touch on this is his US title open challenge that he's been running, just like John Cena did a decade ago. I think it saved him. And when I say it saved Sami Zayn, of course, Sami Zayn is sort of cemented his position in the WWE over the last, I want to say ever since the Bloodline, he's really cemented himself in the company as that sort of upper mid card. And I think his character really works. Unlike the LA Knights or, you know, future Jacob Fatu or Bron Breakker or those sort of characters where we know we need to execute on them and they need to become world champion. I think Sami Zayn, who is solid, you know, aka Sammy Hogan, he's got those allegations for a reason. Because when Sami Zayn gets going, he really gets going. You know what I mean? I think in this case, the character of Sami Zayn doing everything he can. And when it comes to the big times, when it comes to the world championships, he comes up this short, just this short. He misses it by an inch, by a centimeter. And I think that works in his character. That works for him, the way he's positioned, who he is in the company. So the US Championship is perfect for him. I think initially everyone was a bit like, okay, why the hell does Solo Sikoa take so many L's to Sami Zayn? And then after that, he just takes the definitive L for the US Championship on a random Smackdown. And it's like, what are we doing? Sami Zayn just transitioned from Raw to Smackdown. It made no sense. And I was a bit like, what are we doing? And then fast forward, we start to see Sami Zayn get booed. Provided it was in Chicago, I believe it was, and it was against John Cena. So it was like maybe a one-off. Because since then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't really heard Sami Zayn get booed. But I think the reason for that is because he's gone into this whole position of doing this US title open challenge every single week. Because one thing that Sami Zayn's always had, irrespective of people being maybe sick of him or you know, when he's going over people that he shouldn't be going over on, the one thing that's always defended him is his in-ring. Like, he's put on top tier matches, whether it's his time in NXT or as El Generico back in Ring of Honor. He's always been a top tier talent within the ropes. And this weekly title challenge is exactly what Sami Zayn needed to keep him afloat and keep him in a positive light in terms of how us fans view Sami Zayn. Because honestly, if Sami Zayn just went into something similar he did with his Intercontinental Championship run, which wasn't that bad, but he just has, like, you know, sporadic normal challenges and defenses for his title, we'd probably start to see a bit more fatigue, Sami Zayn fatigue. But I think Sami Zayn fatigue is at all-time low right now, just because we get so distracted. Because every time Sami Zayn comes out, it's, okay, we're kind of making it about the new person. We're kind of making it about somebody else, and we're giving it an opportunity. Just like John Cena did a decade ago. We had some superstars back then who came out and challenged Cena for the US Championship that never would have got that spotlight during that period in their career if it wasn't for the program of the US title open challenge. And I think we're seeing that again right now, and it puts Sami Zayn in this favorable position that he needs to be as a babyface. Because so far, week by week, we've been seeing some absolute bangers, including the match with John Cena. I really enjoyed that. And lastly, I want to touch on the main event on Smackdown between the ladies. The triple threat for the Women's Championship between Tiffany Stratton, Nia Jax, and Jade Cargill. And to be honest, it was a very fun, chaotic match. And when I say chaotic, Jesus Christ, like Jade Cargill's bump, like you can go on the web right now and you will see it's embedded into actual brow ridge. Horrible. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw a clip on Instagram, I think yesterday, and Nia Jax did something similar to somebody. I think it was during the pandemic era, during the Thunderdome. I can't remember who she threw into the steel steps. They also cut them open in a similar fashion. And oh boy, that ending, man. That ending, very controversial. It's got people 50-50 right now. You know, some people are blaming the refs, some are blaming Nia Jax. Here's my take on it. Essentially, I believe Nia Jax should have kicked out, and the referee's doing what the referee should have done. Now, for anyone saying, oh, the referee should have just gone ahead and counted, we have to understand one thing. Close calls, close pinfalls, I mean, the referee has to go into a mode where he or she is making it seem so close to hitting that third count on the mat, but then lifts their arm the last millisecond. That is the whole art behind close pinfalls, right? Close calls, that's exactly how it works. So she was, of course, the referee was, of course, in that mode. And here is why it makes sense for the referee to do that, even though Nia Jax didn't move. Nia Jax got hit. Jade connected with the Eye of the Storm. Nia Jax, like, literally almost kicked out of it, right? And then Tiffany kicks Jade off of Nia and goes for the pinfall. If Nia's just kicked out of the move, she's got X amount of more seconds to recover in the world of kayfabe. Why is she all of a sudden going to play dead? Like, that goes against everything we know with professional wrestling, you know, in the world of kayfabe. And even common sense if you can apply that to wrestling, but you know what I mean. Like, if someone gets hit and they kick out, and then they take no more damage, and then they get pinned like 5-10 seconds later or whatever, and now they're down for the count, it's like, what? So I really think it's not the referee's fault. And let's say the referee did count down to 3. Honestly, we still would have reacted. Or at least I would have reacted like, hold on a minute. Like, where's the logic here? This goes against all of professional wrestling's logic. I understand we live in a time and place right now where kayfabe it's not dead, but it's not as prominent as it once was. From a character standpoint, yeah, but from the in-ring, it needs to still be exactly what it's always been. Anyways, I want to touch on Jade Cargill herself, not just the brutal injury she's had, but we're starting to hear a lot of talks online amongst fans saying, hey, does someone hate Jade Cargill backstage? You know, we thought, I think it was SummerSlam, we should have executed, pulled the trigger. It was her time to beat Tiffany. Tiffany's been undefeated, I think, this whole year. You know, her time, you know, she should pass on the towel, all that sort of stuff. I think, here's where I disagree. Jade Cargill, ever since she's debuted in the WWE, she's had this impeccable aura, as we know, right? She's sort of put herself on the upper mid card. She's put herself up there, you know, in terms of the hierarchy of the women. We know that she's improved, but she was very green, and she's still got a few areas in her game where she can improve. And she continues to do that, like week in, week out, month on month, year by year, she's improving in every sense of the way. However, if the WWE had executed on this woman months ago, or even last year, and she was world champ by now, and she was one of the top champions, I guarantee you, all you wrestling fans would be like, giving her the Roman Reigns 2015, 2016 treatment. I'm not even joking. I really think you would. Because we know that she's not so polished in the ring, but she's got the look. Who does that sound like? I mean, to be fair, Roman Reigns was never bad in the ring. Anyone that says he was bad in the ring is just trying to sound different. Let's just say it as is. I'm not saying he's as technical as Seth Rollins in the ring, but Roman Reigns can always manage himself in the ring. He's definitely an exciting act to watch. He was back then and he is now. Jade Cargill, from an athletic standpoint, is of course was tremendous. However, in terms of how polished she is, putting together wrestling strings, and her synergy and chemistry with opponents can be sometimes offbeat. And like I said, over time it's only improving. But given her ranking in the company ever since she's debuted, and her look, those are all ingredients, right? Let's be honest. Wrestling fans just literally completely deter from character like that. But what they're doing with Jade Cargill is, you know, she's putting in the reps, she's putting in the mileage, in the ring, in all these matches. Mid-card, upper-card, all that sort of stuff. And she's losing, but she's improving. I think that is exactly the formula we need for someone like Jade Cargill, where ultimately she's ultimately gonna stay over with the crowd and only get more and more over, as opposed to just straight away executing on her. I think the situation with her is different. Again, I'll go back to mentioning LA Knight for the men's side of things, where I believe we could have executed on him ages ago, months ago, even last year, and, you know, pulled the trigger and given him a world championship. It's different with Jade Cargill. Jade Cargill has been in sort of murky water sometimes with the audience, you know, where it sort of feels like she has to earn the respect of, you know, diehard wrestling fans in terms of what she can do in the ring, and just doesn't rely on her elite athletic ability and her tremendous look. I mean, let's be fair, she looks like a freaking superhero character. But this really prevents Jade Cargill from being referred to as they're pushing her down our throat. Because I really think we can get a tremendous babyface championship run out of Jade Cargill, where eventually they execute. And to be fair, even if they execute sometime next year, let's say at WrestleMania or anything like that, I think that would have been enough marination in the fridge, enough time in the oven to cook that bad boy, and we would have had a nice finished product that we can really sink our teeth into, be like, you know what, she's paid her dues, she's improved so much, I'm glad they finally executed on her, and she's world champion, well deserved. And then, you know, after that you can always turn her heel. So I actually like the direction they're taking with Jade Cargill. I know sometimes it can be frustrating because it's like, okay, let's just get a new champion, and I think Jade Cargill in some ways is ready, but I still think she can continue to polish her game even more, and I think her relationship with the crowd is more important than just executing her ASAP. But those were my key takeaways from this week's SmackDown. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.